Landlords across the country have been forced to raise rents due to inflation, and now tenants are facing a 20% increase in rental prices. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over the topic of the day, and that is inflation, okay? The price of everything has risen in the last couple of years, and it's all due to the money that they've been printing up there in the federal government. I mean, they've been passing out money like there's no tomorrow. I read somewhere that more than 30% of all money here in the U.S. in existence was printed within the last 2 years. That's how crazy all this is, okay? This is an insane situation. And hey, landlords are feeling the effects just like everyone else when it comes to inflation. So when they say, hey, these rent prices are going up and it's these greedy landlords, I want to make it very clear that it is not greed, okay? It is us dealing with the exact same economic situation that everyone else in the country is dealing with right now. That's rising gas prices, rising cost for employees, every material you buy, everything that you need to repair your unit, fix your unit costs more, okay? Your insurance has gone up, your property taxes have gone up, etc., etc., etc. Everything is increasing in cost. So you can't sit here and expect for landlords not to be raising their prices as well. It's inevitable, okay? We have to do it. Now, are there going to be people who are unfortunately caught up in the point where they can't afford the housing that they used to be able to afford? Yes, and that is an unfortunate situation. But this is a consequence of those easy money policies that your government was pushing just a short while ago. That's why I'm totally opposed to just huge amounts of stimulus they were throwing out there, okay? It caused more problems than it solved, and they didn't see that until it was too late. Okay, so yeah, this is insane. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. What do you think of this whole situation with inflation, okay? Do you think that this is temporary, that this is going to come to an end soon, or do you think we have further to go? And in terms of inflation in rent prices, right, do you blame landlords for being greedy, or do you think that there are other issues that cause this? I already told you what my opinion was, but I'm curious what the people watching this video, what they think, okay? So this article, it's coming from 13abc.com, and it says, Americans are facing soaring rental prices. So this article, of course, it has, stories of tenants, and they don't really talk much to the landlords in the situation. I mean, they do make a brief mention of a response a landlord had to the tenant why they were raising the rent, but there's no good interview with a landlord, so it always comes off as, hey, these landlords are greedy. So let's get into it. I'll rip it apart as we go. Americans already feeling the sting of inflation now have to deal with skyrocketing rental prices. Prices have increased 20% from just 2 years ago and is forcing some people to leave their homes. Laura Guilemain and her daughter Carson have 30 days to find a new home. Guilemain says she has looked into thousands of properties and still cannot find an affordable one. For 3 years, she has been paying $2,100 a month for a 3-bedroom residence in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Last month, she got a letter from her landlord that said her new rent would be $3,200 a month. An attorney for her landlord said that rising property taxes and mortgage rates are to blame. And those are very, very good reasons. So her rent went from $2,100 a month up to $3,200 a month, right? Now, she said she got this letter from the landlord. They didn't mention in there if, a new person had bought the property from the old owner. That's the case in a lot of these situations. What happens is a new real estate investor will buy a property from, another one, right? And their cost basis is going to be higher. So the old one, they bought the property 10 years ago. Maybe they paid $200,000 for it. Well, the new person coming in, they bought the property this year at this year's prices, and they paid $400,000, double what that other person paid. So their mortgage rate is going to be higher. Not only that, but the property taxes are going to be higher because every single year, cities and counties are coming back and raising those property taxes because they still want their money, okay? They're not going to say, hey, we don't want our money because, it's a rough time right now and we know everybody's struggling. No, they want their money every single year. That's how they pay for, schools and roads, etc. I don't blame them, but that puts the landlord in a situation where they have to raise the rent, and that is a fact. So then we throw in the fact that, hey, utility costs have risen. The amount that I pay for my handyman to fix stuff is increased. The cost of raw materials has increased. The cost of my insurance policy has increased. The cost of everything has increased. And when it comes down to it, a landlord who, last year, your landlord who used to own the property was making $200 or $300 a month profit off of you, right? And he sold it to me. Now I'm not making any profit based on the amount of rent that you are paying. So yes, I have to raise the rent. That is unfortunate for you. If you can't afford it, well, here is my suggestion for you. You either move to a place that you can afford, right? Or you increase your income or make sacrifices on other things so that you can pay the rent and stay here. But I am under no obligation to provide you with housing that you can afford, any more than the guy down the street has to let me stay in his mansion for what I can afford. Okay. All right. So, just think about that for a minute. Okay. And yeah, that's an extreme example, but I have to use examples like this because people, they always say, well, you should be kind to these people. I'm like, well, nobody in Beverly Hills in a $20 million mansion is being kind to me. Okay. So, we put that on a smaller scale with you. And why should I let you stay in one of my houses when you can't afford it? Okay. But anyway, let's continue. I freaked out. We can't afford it. We can't do it, Geilman said. There's a housing affordability crisis in the U.S. With home prices sky high. Americans are being forced into a competitive rental market. Geilman is a single mother and disabled veteran. She is reliant on rental assistance from Housing and Urban Development. She says she already had fewer options, but now the landlords looking to capitalize on rising rents are less willing to accept the strict guidelines of her rental voucher. Geilman said that without the rental assistance, she would be homeless. So yeah, we're talking about a tenant here who is on rental assistance, Section 8. Okay, yeah, she's going to have more difficulty finding somewhere to rent than a tenant would if they were just coming with their own income. That is just a fact. There's a lot of landlords who don't want to participate in these housing assistance programs and Section 8 programs. That's a completely different topic. But when it comes down to it, right, the housing affordability crisis is being driven by the rising inflation in all other sectors. Now, a landlord, in my opinion, has a right to make a profit on their business. And yes, they are raising the rents to the highest rates in a lot of cases because they know going into the future, they might not be able to get those sort of rent increases. So they have to jump on them right now, make the money right now, because they could be suffering losses going into the future. Okay. So, really, when you're looking at rent increases, when you're looking at people's landlords of business plans, you're looking at a long-term game. Okay. It is not something that we're looking, short term, we're trying to fleece these tenants for every penny we can get and we're trying to screw people over. No. What we're trying to do is make our investment the most profitable it is, right? Because eventually we're going to have expenses that come up, be that vacancy, be that large scale repairs, be that capital expenditures, etc., that we're going to have to cover. And the only way we can cover those large scale expenses is if we had our rents up at a high enough level that we could build up emergency reserves. Every landlord knows this. But unfortunately, the tenants, they don't know this. They see things in a very, limited financial perspective. They don't understand the finances behind real estate or running any sort of business. Okay, they don't realize that our profit margins are not what they think. They think, that everything that we make over the mortgage payment is pure profit, and they're just dead wrong. They are dead wrong. Okay, I mean, a lot of landlords are making, less than 10%. Okay, 10% return on their investment annually, less than that. So, what can you say? That's not a lot of money. It just isn't. Rents are rising across the country and are up nearly 20% in 2 years. In cities like Memphis, Tampa, and Riverside, California, prices are up nearly 40%. The Miami area is up 58%. When there's a hurricane, it's illegal for gas stations to jack up the prices. Why is there not a cap in the state of Florida? Guy Main said. Actually, there is a cap in the state of Florida. Now, the state of Florida is one of those places where if there is a natural disaster caused by a hurricane, then landlords are actually prohibited, right, from raising rents, basically taking advantage of the situation. I read about this just recently because, there was another article where they were trying to propose a rent control policy in the state of Florida. And they said the only time rent control could be imposed was after a natural disaster such as a hurricane to prevent price gouging. Okay. And so, she's just wrong. She just doesn't know that maybe, but she's just wrong on that fact. And, just goes to show you that, she lives in the state. She doesn't even know what's going on. In Florida, it is illegal to impose rent controls. Florida renter Sarah Espinoza said it gives her a lot of anxiety. She is facing a 106% increase in her rent in Coral Gables, Florida. For 22 years, she has lived in a 3-bedroom home. She has raised her son there. The $1,700 she pays in rent is below market value, but the $3,500 that her new landlord is charging is out of her budget. Yeah, notice there that they said, once again, new landlord. She's lived in this place for 22 years. So I'm going to assume that her former landlord had owned the place the entire time that she lived there. That's why her rent was below market level, because the former landlord was still making a profit at their price basis, which was much, much lower when they bought the property 22 years ago. Okay, the new landlord has to raise the rent on you. I bet you that $1,700 a month this lady's paying won't even cover the mortgage on this property. And yes, I feel bad for the tenants in Florida. I really do, right? Because Florida has become so popular lately. But this is a consequence of when a place becomes very popular. You can see the same thing happen to California, 40, 50 years ago. There was just a flood of people moving in there, and housing costs, they increased because the supply was, one level and the demand was much, much greater. Okay? When an area is popular, that is a good thing. But Florida does have the benefit of it still being much more affordable than places like California, much more developer friendly, much more landlord friendly. And, that means that they will be able to build more housing. They will be able to eventually keep the flow of new housing built so that the housing is affordable for people. But nobody is guaranteed. Nobody is promised that we have to build we have to provide a house for you just because you exist. You get to have a house. No, it doesn't work that way. So like I was saying, inflation is the real driving factor behind why housing costs have increased. Landlords are we are in the short term benefiting from it, but the truth of the matter is that we are suffering the same consequences of it. And if we don't raise our rent prices now, we are going to suffer going into the future as the price of everything else continues to increase.